when we talk of security, the peace process in the country also need to be one of the issues that I would like to discuss. What do you think of peace process which has been going ups and down in the last few years, and especially in the last 1 year? We still have fightings, but we are also, Myanmar is, the State Councillor is also having the 21st Panlong Conference very soon. What do you think of the process?
Well, we're strong supporters. Myanmar, like any country, needs peace in order to prosper. So we very much want to see peace. We know it's extremely difficult just because there's so many different groups involved. And there's such a long history of conflict that it's not easy to get to peace. But I think Myanmar has an opportunity now. And having more groups sign on to the nationwide ceasefire is an important step. But of course, it's just a step. And it would lead to the national political dialogue, which will take, we think, probably quite some time. But again, our view is this is a huge opportunity for Myanmar. And so every time we talk to the government, the Tatmadaw, and to members of the different ethnic armed groups, and we always encourage them to redouble their efforts. Try not to miss this opportunity for a big step forward on peace.
We notice that in recent months, China has been, as a nation, as a country, as a neighbor of Myanmar, has been active when it comes to the peace process, because especially talking and being in the discussion with some of the armed ethnic groups. What do you think of that? Is there any discussion between the United States and China, either here or abroad, when it comes to dealing with such complicated issues in the peace process?
Sure. Well, what I would say is I think a lot of members of the international community want to see peace here, want to see the peace process succeed, and we talk regularly amongst ourselves here, and I certainly do with my Chinese counterpart on a pretty regular basis. I don't want to speak for the Chinese government, I can't do that, but to the extent that China is able to encourage all the players to move forward on the peace process, we think that can be very helpful. So I think we'd like to see all governments involved do what they can to support the peace process.
Yeah. I'd like to go a little bit moved away from U.S. Myanmar related issues. North Korea, a big issue now, a very worrisome issue for many countries and in Asia as well. Are we going to see a conflict in the peninsula?
Well, what I would say is North Korea is a big concern. Its behavior has been concerning for many years, and it's arguably increasingly concerning because it's continuing to test missiles and other weapons that pose a threat to the entire region, including the United States. So it's essential that all of us work together to try to move the North Korean government into a more positive direction. This is a very troubling situation, and it requires, as I said, I think all of the governments of the region, including the United States, to work together to try to find a solution.
How do you see the role of UN in such a situation? We see the differences within the Security Council, for example, and even within the United Nations. So, but what is your position on the role of the United Nations in the...
Well, I think the Security Council has been very active and actually quite united on North Korea. The Security Council has acted any number of times with consensus to support further sanctions and other steps to send a clear message to the North Korean government that it needs to desist from these very destabilizing actions. So we will continue to work through the Security Council as well as with our bilateral partners to try to address this problem.
Yeah. We just had the President Trump is willing to meet the leader of North Korea, are we going to see such dramatic activity likely to see in near future?
Well, I don't think it'd be appropriate for me to add on to what the president himself said about this yesterday. I'd just leave it at that.
Going back to freedom, media freedom and freedom of expression, just thinking out loud, because we have now advancement of technology, we have the issue like artificial intelligence and all this coming up. Is media freedom or freedom of expression is a right which, for example, in the United States, granted by the Constitution, or is it becoming a culture, or is it becoming a culture that needs to be developed over a period of time? For example, especially countries like Myanmar, which were under the military dictatorship for many years and moving to an open society. So the discussion between the rights and responsibilities and the culture that need to be debated, because that is what is, I think, also taking place kind of in Myanmar.
Well, I think there are certain, the world has agreed that there are certain universal values and universal rights, including the right to freedom of expression, freedom of speech. It's not just a U.S. value or U.S. principle, although it's one that's very important to us. We think it's critical to the success of modern societies, that people be able to enjoy all of their freedoms. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not useful for people, citizens of all countries, to do what they can to educate themselves and to read from a wide variety of sources so that they have good information. I think the proliferation of media sources, in some ways, it's many ways, it's a great thing. It also does mean that we readers, those of us who watch the news or are reading the newspapers or reading online, we probably have to do a little bit more work to make sure we're getting the right information. But I don't think that changes in any way the importance of freedom of expression, because the trouble is, once people start limiting freedom of expression, where do you stop? And who gets the right to limit it? And so, in our view, it's really important that freedom of expression be as broad as possible.
Yeah, but freedom of expression do have limitations for many people. For example, hate speech. How? Because you have had for many years, and you also have this kind of issue being dealt. So, what do you think of this particular topic in Myanmar? Because that is the issue Myanmar is struggling with.
It's an issue that many, many countries, including the United States, struggle with. It's not an easy issue. And we wouldn't say that everybody should follow exactly the U.S. approach. I think our view is that hate speech is a serious problem. As much as possible, it should be countered by others with a much more positive message. And any legal mechanisms that are put in place to limit hate speech should be as limited as possible. In other words, it's really, each society has to decide exactly what the line is, I think. But it's important that that hate speech not also be used as a rationale to curb fundamental freedom of expression.
Yeah. Just one more question. The United States, especially in Myanmar, through U.S. aid, has been supporting for the development of media groups, especially ethnic media groups and independent media groups. With the new administration coming in, there are some worry and concern that that kind of support that U.S. aid has been giving could be either reduced or stopped in a period of time. Is it factual? Is it the fact that one should worry, or what kind of support that you would like to have for such independent and ethnic media groups for the media development in Myanmar?
Well, you're right that we've been focused for the past several years on providing assistance in a lot of different areas in Myanmar, trying to help support the reform efforts in the economy and so on. And one of those has been to support independent, capable, strong media. We certainly hope to want to continue those efforts. Every year, and with every new administration, there's always budget issues. There's never enough money to go around. And so we'll have to see what the, when Congress finishes with both the budget proposal for the rest of 2017 and 2018. I can't predict what those numbers will be, but what I can say is that our hope and our intention is to continue being as supportive as we can.
Thank you. Is there anything you would like to add for our readers and viewers?
I think the main message that I want to give is that the new administration in the United States, including during Vice President Pence's recent visit to Indonesia, has strongly reaffirmed the commitment not only to Myanmar, but to engaging with ASEAN, with Southeast Asia, noting that the President will travel to the Philippines and Vietnam later this year to attend the East Asia Summit, the U.S.-ASEAN Summit, as well as APEC. So I think what we're seeing is a strong reaffirmation of the U.S. commitment to this entire region, including Myanmar.
Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you.
Excellency.